when people said Donald Trump was anti-press, he had the power of the executive. I was actually disappointed that Donald Trump didn't do more on Section 230. Didn't do anything to actually get anybody. He revoked some people's press pass because they asked some dishonest questions for a day and a half. Think about it. I don't want, if there's a Republican in power, I want that potential tyranny, regardless of who's wielding that power, to have some checks and balances. This is just as much for future liberals because I don't want them to be removed from the platform. Outside of criminality, meaning actually calling for violence or physical harm to people, right? These are things that we have laws for these things. This is just as much for liberals as it is for conservatives. It's just really hard for liberals right now to see that because they, even though Donald Trump was president for 4 years and even during that time, they see themselves as the ones in power because you have really 3 to 5 companies who are more powerful than any national government that has ever existed in the world before today. And that's Facebook, Twitter, Alphabet, Apple, Amazon.
My guest this week is the self-proclaimed strangest animal of talk radio and the host of Louder with Crowder. Stephen Crowder, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Well, I don't proclaim that. That's Gowan's song, but I appreciate you attributing that lofty praise, so I'll take it.
I was told it was self-proclaimed. We do some serious research around here. You've just allowed it to become part of the lore?
Yeah, exactly. I've allowed it, and I don't even think we have the rights to the music. But I appreciate that, you started off as a comedian, as did I, yet you do actual research, and I feel compelled to, whereas a lot of other media, half the time I'm going like, what? Are none of you going to fact check this? Why am I the one to do this? And I see you doing that a lot too. So regardless of politics, I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, that is going to be sort of the thrust of everything we talk about for the next hour. Because yes, whether we agree on everything or not is irrelevant, but I know you do your research and you fact checked a lot of things that I see in the media that are nonsense, and you do a great job with it, which is why I wanted to have you on. And I've been on your show, and we're going to do a little something for you after. This is cross-promotion-a-palooza.
Wait, do a little something for me after. Hold on, people listening, he's going to come on the show. It doesn't have anything to do with his queer party friends.
No, yeah, none of that kind of stuff. We're on Skype, but everyone's going to stay clothed. Okay, let's start here. So Crowder, I know a little bit about your history, but for the people that know nothing about you, first off, you're in Michigan right now. Is that correct?
No, let's not talk about it. My show is based out of Michigan. I don't need my whereabouts disclosed. Can we? Oh gosh, this is a problem with live television. I was born in Detroit, raised in Montreal. And so I started acting at a young age, 12 years old, was doing voice work and TV, and started doing stand-up in my mid-teens, which then brought me to New York, LA, as soon as I was old enough to be in a bar in the States. And kind of came full circle. I was a young libertarian, sort of edgy, I guess considered comic, getting banned from clubs and colleges. And then went to the internet, and then here we are. But yeah, it all started out, was raised in Montreal, acting, stand-up. That was my bread and butter, really up until I was pulled into this political arena at, I want to say 21 at Fox News.
Yeah, it's funny. I also feel like I was sort of pulled into this. I've always loved politics, and I studied politics in college. But in this recent incarnation in the last couple of years, I do feel like there's this pull, whether I like it or not. But so were you always into politics? So you were getting banned at clubs? What were you doing?
Yeah, colleges. Well, there was I remember the first thing was a multicultural fair, and Muslims complained. And this was long before Ahmed the Dead Terrorist or any of that. If you watch, I've done plenty of material on Islam, and I've made fun of literally every single group or politician on our program. Particularly if people subscribe to the podcast, our commercials are nothing but sketches and parodies, and so everyone, no one is safe there. I just made a joke about some kind of like a Muslim guy beating his wife. I don't remember what it was. I might have been 17 at the time, beating his wife in order to keep quiet about the fact that he beat her. And people got offended, and then Asians got offended because I had some jokes about anime. I remember being young, just thinking, this is comedy, right? Like some other guy just got up talking about a three-way at a truck stop, and my stuff is relatively benign. It's offensive, but it's not dirty. So it started with that, and then just meetings in back rooms, with Viacom and MTV, and people saying, you really shouldn't be saying this. So it just sort of happened organically. I was always conservative, Because I was raised in a socialist province. My parents were, like my dad just taught me.
That's how you do it. Yeah.
Yes. Well, you know what? And that's true. A lot of people don't understand. If you talk to people who've left those places, very, very few of them still support socialism. The people who are in it who don't know any better, you'll probably get a lot of Canadians who like their free health care. But once you have Canadians who've experienced the quality of American health care, at best, you'll get them saying, yeah, the quality's better here, but I still like the safety net of Canada. So it started with me as a kid, at 12 years old, 13 years old, making pretty significant checks, doing this show Arthur at PBS. I got to meet Garfunkel when I was there, and I was during his phase where we were coached, do not mention Paul Simon. So I'm a 13-year-old kid. Like, listen, Art Garfunkel's coming in. Don't ever say the name Paul Simon. And
that's not
anyway,
easy.
So no, it's not easy. I mean, what did you really didn't do a lot without the Simon. And my dad explained to me, listen, this is your check. 52% is going to be gone for, and went down the list. And as a kid, I was, but that's my money. I still have to make up the time I left school to go to the studio. And so it developed pretty organically, and I do attribute it to a good dad. Even though you and him would disagree on a lot, he always encouraged me to answer questions and think critically. He didn't say, you're a conservative, you're a Christian. He'd say, why do you believe this? And, substantiate your claim. And so there was no moment of genius. It just sort of happened that way.
Yeah, and I know you know this, but I love talking to people that I would disagree with. I'd rather talk to people that I would disagree with, but someone that's coming from a principled place. So like you, for example, I mean, I've seen you do things that many of my friends on the left would say are incredibly offensive things about trans people or handicapped people or Muslims or whatever else. But to me, your style is sort of more the Seth MacFarlane Family Guy style, which is we literally make fun of everyone, period. And that's sort of the egalitarian way of comedy that it should be done, I think.
Yeah, I don't. What have I done about handicapped people? I can't. I mean, we have. I'm sure. I have no doubt.
Well,
but
you were in the wheelchair.
No, I actually had knee surgery.
Oh, that was. I thought. Well, I know you had knee surgery, but I thought that was part of.
No, that was legitimate. That was legitimate. Yeah, the journey for Bernie. No, I actually had knee surgery, but now.
Well, you really take comedy far. That you go ahead and have knee surgery just for the bit. That's commitment.
It is commitment. Well, that was commitment. That was a journey for Bernie, where Jean-Guy Tremblay went in for 9 hours at a Bernie rally. I mean, at the end of the day, it's either funny or it's not. And I know you'll get people in the comment section go, "This is why conservatives can't be funny." I've never been of that school. I think Jon Stewart is hilarious. One of my favorite comedians is Kathleen Madigan. I think Bill Maher. It can be so horrendously unfunny, it's unwatchable, because all he does is throw up his hands and make a political statement. There's nothing wrong with that. Right? Oh, these teabaggers, and everyone, like, that's just hack to me. He can be funny.
Love Bill Maher.
Sorry, he can be funny, but when he does that, you just need to say, okay, your comedy hat is off. And I do give them more leeway than people who don't claim to be comedians, but it has to be funny. And I do think, and I wrote about this at Big Hollywood back when it was, Andrew Breitbart was a good friend before it was Breitbart. Shapiro, myself, Adam Baldwin were some of the first writers, and I wrote about the Tina Fey doctrine. And I said there's been a noticeable shift in comedy, and if you'll see this on SNL, where Tina Fey will forego the funny joke deliberately to push an agenda. And she did that with Palin and McCain during that election cycle, and it just wasn't funny. And that's my biggest issue with it. Again, not that you can't do it. You can do it. Just be honest about it. I tell people all the time, yeah, I'm pretty biased, and every now and then I'm going to use my platform to push an agenda that I agree with. And if I could take Koch brother money, I'd have it on a Flava Flav necklace with a spinning K clock. I would be gaudy about it. I wish I had all the special interest money people claim that I do. I don't, but I would take it if I could.
All of these bad ideas that have now infected all of these companies, they're in direct combat or conflict with reality. So when you say that there are biological differences between men and women, which everyone knows to be true, every biologist knows that to be true, but that doesn't fit in with the SJW thing that these companies have now put into their terms of service, they've put into the way they behave with their boards and everywhere else. It's almost like this is a totally intractable problem, because their reality actually is different than the reality that we've known for thousands of years.
You know what's funny though is actually, I will say this and the people say, well, why do you focus on the trans issue so much? Well, I will say this because as a Christian conservative, I believe when you say that there is no fundamental difference at all between men and women, that men and women are completely interchangeable, I think that's a real problem for our civilization. I think it's a real problem if we're not saying that, hey, there are moms, there are dads, there are boys, there are girls, because you raise them differently. Not only that, you support them differently. As a community, you find out how to help them differently. But I will say this, there is something kind of funny, we were talking about this earlier on my program this morning, about how things that you would say would be considered toxically masculine or patriarchal or be considered anti-woman unless it's trans. So for example, the 50-year-old man who's playing college basketball in the girls' league, or Fallon Fox, who lived as a man and fathered children into his 30s, and then beat up women identifying as a female. When you read their stories, what they say is, you know what? When I came out to my teammates, you're 6'8", 245 pounds, by the way. I think they deserve an Academy Award if you think you were coming out. But they said, my teammates never knew this. I was just reading this today on air. My teammates never knew this because my level of endurance, strength, my lung capacity, I was the same as other women. Well, hold on a second. What are you implying there? Or if you look at a lot of the times what a trans male to female is, well, it's really perpetuation of these unrealistic beauty standards. It's usually someone dressing like a Barbie with a blonde wig and over-the-top makeup, right? And usually they end up getting breast implants. These are things that are thought of as toxic masculine stereotypes until you say, well, I'm trans, and people didn't know because I'm weaker, I'm smaller, I'm slower, I don't have the same lung capacity. But look at my blonde wig and makeup, right? That's what a woman is. It distills both sexes to the stereotypes that we're supposed to reject, only now we have to embrace as a part of this very, very new, by the way, sort of gender experiment. And I think that that's also really important as it relates to the speech guidelines online. Because when you effectively are saying that half of the medical community are not allowed to voice an opinion, that your rules are being applied equally, then I just disagree as to what equally means. And then, of course, we get back to the idea of Facebook, where they don't even say what it is. We still have no, what happened with the stream? Why's it gone? It's gone. Just give me an answer.
And Dave, on that point, I mean, when you look at the rules themselves and the way they've been set out, even the very basic statement of saying, we won't allow hate or harassment based on race, religion, political ideology, and you say, okay, so you're not allowed to make fun of white male Christians. Okay, got it. All right, is that?
Wait, do they say political ideology? I'd be shocked if that's in there.
So they used to say political ideology, and then in 2016, they actually gave statements to the Senate saying, we don't actually do it. And that was the thing that they trumpeted everywhere because it wasn't in their particular rules, but they were being called out about it. And they said, no. In case anyone is concerned, we do not do that. I mean, it's in the response letter. It's in their articles. Multiple spokespersons said, we do not do that. And that is the thing that they have advertised ever since. And they even say it now. You have Mark Zuckerberg saying, no, Senator, we do not engage in any kind of ideological, considerations. We do not suppress conservatives. And I'm not saying they suppress every single conservative.
No.
That's not a hill anyone needs to die on. It's a question about individual voices and what they're doing and the rules as they have them. But how do you define these things? They can't define them, and yet, in the end, the creators are the ones that are abused because of it.
And by the way, this is just as much for liberals as it is for conservatives. I mean, keep in mind, look, this is something also to consider. When people said Donald Trump was anti-press, he had the power of the executive. I was actually disappointed that Donald Trump didn't do more on Section 230. Didn't do anything to actually get anybody. He revoked some people's press pass because they asked some dishonest questions for a day and a half. Think about it. I don't want, if there's a Republican in power, I want that potential tyranny, regardless of who's wielding that power, to have some checks and balances. This is just as much for future liberals because I don't want them to be removed from the platform. Outside of criminality, meaning actually calling for violence or physical harm to people, right? These are things that we have laws for these things. This is just as much for liberals as it is for conservatives. It's just really hard for liberals right now to see that because even though Donald Trump was president for 4 years, and even during that time, they see themselves as the ones in power because you have really 3 to 5 companies who are more powerful than any national government that has ever existed in the world before today. And that's Facebook, Twitter, Alphabet, Apple, Amazon.
So does that worry you, or does that push your libertarian stuff to the end? Because, I mean, I agree with you on that. And it's like, if you're breaking the laws of the United States, then you got a bigger problem than the platforms, because then the government's going to go after you. So that should clean up most of that. But you hear, there were all these conservatives saying, oh, Trump had to do something. And now I still hear some of them saying it, but it's like, wait a minute, I thought you hate Biden, so now you want the government involved, even though it's not your guy anymore? Like, it sort of just basically flipped everybody's beliefs on top of themselves.
My position has always been very consistent, whereas I just want the first step is them deciding. I want them to publicly declare if they're a platform, if they want to be treated as such, or a publisher, because they're kind of benefiting from both sets of rules right now. And you have to pick one, right? Either you are liable for the kind of content on your platform, in which case you can take these actions, which they take, which act beyond the law. And in some cases, by the way, don't even follow the law because there's a different set of online law. To give you an idea here, we had it for a long time in this country, okay? An idea of what investigative journalism was. That no longer exists. It no longer exists because, first off, we have single-party consent laws. YouTube and Facebook don't necessarily follow those laws. So you can say, okay, we're finding someone who's a corrupt member of Congress or, a senator or running for president, for example, and we're in a single-party consent state, which means that legally I have the right to record this conversation, and I catch them in an act that is deliberately harmful, right? That is deliberately manipulative, something like that. I mean, for example, the Access Hollywood tape. You can follow all these laws, and it can be removed because YouTube says they want to. It can be removed, as we've seen, on the same day from YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, even though you followed the laws, and then if you've broken the laws, it can be allowed to stay up. That is a very, very scary thing. We've had this happen where we've interviewed people on the street, right? And we were already in single-party consent states where we had the right to interview people, but had them sign release forms to be on air with these questions. And then YouTube said, actually, someone said this was a violation of privacy. So this is a public protest where there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. And by the way, we have them, if we want us to send you the form, we have them on camera confirming and consenting. They say, doesn't matter because now the rule is if anyone ever regrets being on camera, we're going to remove it. Well, how wonderful that would have been for Nixon. How wonderful for Anthony Weiner. Investigative journalism doesn't exist anymore. And that is scary because these people can effectively create the laws, and that determines what you can and can't see, and it determines who and who is never held accountable.
But I want to be really clear because there are a lot of people who sort of get by on social media drama, and there's a throttling and there's a counterclaim. Look, we've had false copyright claims. We've never lost on those, right? My half-Asian lawyer, Bill Richmond. We've filed counterclaims. We've had to file petitions of information in the past. This is very different. This is the big one. We filed an official notice that we are filing a lawsuit with YouTube and an immediate motion for an injunctive relief, because we have 2 strikes in our account right now, and we have good reason to believe that there may be a third one that they're looking for. How do I know this?
They're just waiting.
Well, and because it's not very clear. I should say it is very clear that we didn't violate specific policies. And so they say, well, maybe the totality of it in tandem. So if people want to know, and by the way, people can still watch us. We're available at Mug Club, in Blaze, louderwithcreditor.com/Mug Club. And we always recommend that people join anyways because there's an hour worth of extra content every day. But we're still making sure that the free content is available on Apple, on Android, Spotify, and right now on Rumble, though we can't stream live. It's a little glitchy. We're working with them. But, the issue here with YouTube, to give you an idea on a couple of strikes, the first one that came in was a warning, though it was supposed to be a hard strike, on voter fraud. Now, I have never said that Donald Trump won the election, that the ghost of Hugo Chavez, rigged Smartmatic and whisked away Wisconsin. But just like Amy Klobuchar, just like Elizabeth Warren, just like Jimmy Carter, I said that individual voter fraud does occur. And of course, as they said, it occurs far more with mass mail-in voting, just because there are fewer checks and balances. There are fewer ways to sort of verify. And so the segment that we did was almost comical in us saying, not that there's anything wrong with that, saying, not that there's any vote fraud, but we cross-reference voter rolls with addresses that didn't exist on Google Earth, sent interns with a copy of that day's paper at an empty lot, on camera, live, to say, look, we know that it occurs. I think it might have been 30 or 40 addresses. They said that's a violation of the election fraud policy. Okay. The second one was...
Wait, can I pause you there? Because I think just sort of philosophically, and I don't want to get myself booted now too, but we're not even addressing the philosophic issue, which is, should you be allowed to just say what you want to say in a free country on
Right.
a supposedly open platform and everything else. I mean, it's just worth mentioning that you're saying you didn't break the rules, but the question really is, are the rules just completely insane?
Well, no, absolutely. And by the way, we were never told that we were wrong, too, to be clear. No one is proven. As a matter of fact, we got fact checked, and some people said that we were wrong when really the fact check ended up being they changed the voter rolls the next night to a new address that didn't exist. That was one that was part of a series. So I don't want to get too off into the weeds there, but these were things where we did our due diligence to a comical degree. That was the point of the segment. The first actual strike, I believe, I don't remember the exact sequence, was COVID, 15 days to flatten the curve, a 1-year anniversary. Now, what did we do? We showed them CDC saying, don't wear masks, say wear masks, don't wear double masks, wear double masks. We won't have a vaccine in a year. I wouldn't take the vaccine if it was done in a year. Take the vaccine. All of this stuff, right? Which is really tough to navigate as an American. From what I understand, the statement that was a violation was something to the effect of, because I don't want you to get booted, something to the effect of, the COVID is significantly more lethal to old people. We know that. And we need to figure out how to protect the most vulnerable. But for some reason, due to the immune response, according to the CDC, and we always list our references available on our website, young people are significantly less at risk of death from COVID than the flu. For some reason, but old people, it's way more deadly. We use the CDC mortality tables. We haven't been given a specific reason as to what the violation is, but the time code that I believe we were given was where that statement was made, and we're the only show I know of. If you go to louderwithcrowder.com, every single episode has a page with the references. The references for that statement were the CDC and World Health Organization. Now, some people can say, well, you're making it seem like it's not as big of it. People may not take it seriously. Well, A, that's not what I'm saying. And B, if we're going to follow the science, it's important to understand how different immune systems respond to a novel virus. It's important that you don't tell people, shut up if they have a problem with a 2-year-old wearing a mask. If you say, well, hold on a second, we don't have 2 or 4-year-olds wear a mask for the flu, where there are significantly more deaths for younger people. It is significantly deadlier for older people or the immunocompromised. You're not allowed to discuss that. The most recent one, this is the second strike here, and this is why there's a lawsuit, which I really didn't want this to have to come to. I just want to do the show, is when I was recently celebrating, actually praising the officer who saved that young girl's life who was about to be stabbed by Mekhi Bryant. Yeah. I said, not only is that justified shooting from the police, I believe it's necessary, because if the police cannot shoot someone who is in the process of attempting to stab you, then we might as well not have police, and I believe that we should have police. That was considered bullying and harassment, but not technically, but the totality may be over time indicative of bullying, harassing by supporting the police.
Who are you bullying? Who are you bullying by saying that you supported the cop saving a woman's life who was about to be decapitated? Who is that bullying?
Apparently, it might be considered reveling in the death of Mekhi Bryant. I don't know. We don't have an official answer, and we can't get these official answers from people at YouTube. But let me just be really clear with people out there. This is tantamount to saying to everyone out there, if you're conservative, we don't want you. Look, if they are saying, hey, look, you cannot discuss the mortality rates of COVID. You cannot point out that the CDC has been inconsistent and confusing, which has made it harder for Americans to stay safe. You are not allowed to say that voter fraud has ever occurred to any degree, and you are not allowed to support police if they save someone's life mid-stabbing if the person committing the stabbing happens to be a girl of color. That is saying you are not welcome on this platform if you hold these views. Now, if they say that, that's fine. The issue there is I'm pro-business, I'm anti-fraud. YouTube says all views are welcome. Those strikes without description tell us otherwise. We need to know the rule book because people's livelihoods depend on it.
Well, Crowder, last week I put up an interview with David Horowitz. I'm sure you know David Horowitz. And I've never, in all of my years of doing this show, I've never edited for content except one time. I had a guest come on who was drunk and stoned, and we ended up editing just to basically save this person's career. It's the only time we've edited for content.
I did that once too. We can compare notes off air. This person was doing crack in the laundry room. No joke. Yeah.
It was probably the same person. But, yes. But last week, for the first time, we edited for content because David Horowitz, a free man in what I thought was a free country, dared to say 2 sentences that I knew my channel could be deleted like that. So we censored it on YouTube. I mean, simple as that. I put it up in my locals community, but now I'm having you crazy right-wing maniac.
Well, you're such a tease. Now I want to hear the 2 sentences. Well, and that's the issue, right?
Yeah.
What's going to happen is
of course.
all people want to hear are the sentences. And they assume that it's like not seeing the monster in a scary movie. You assume that it's worse than it is. That's how you radicalize people. When you see these New York Times articles saying, hey, radicalization, and it has a picture with me next to Philip DeFranco. And then, by the way,
hey, give me a little credit. I was in there. Come on.
Were you in there too?
Yeah, I was in there.
That's right. Yeah, I would never imagine that you would be in there radicalizing people. Dave Rubin.
Credit where it's due, man.
But what happens is then they complain about echo chambers. Right? Well, look, what's more radical? A view of someone who believes, the guy who believes in a flat tax or the people who believe in 90% income tax? The guy who believes that police need to be demilitarized to a degree, but that they also need to be able to do their job and they should wear body cams? Or the people who believe we should have no police whatsoever, we should have no prisons whatsoever, like Rashida Tlaib, like AOC, like these people believe? This is not a radical point of view. The reason for this lawsuit is, look, could I at some point sail off into the sunset with support from people at Mug Club? I don't know for that, but at some point I could. But what about the next kid who wants to start a business? I started this in 2009, maybe 2008, with a blue bed sheet behind me. I don't see a world in which their point of view is even allowed to be expressed. And we talk about othering people. YouTube is othering an entire half of the country. And by the way, more than 80% of black people, while we're talking about the Mekhi Bryant and that officer situation, more than 80% of black people want at least as much of a police presence as exists now, if not more. And because that isn't a view that is permissible, we silence these minorities too. We host people on look, if the guy who did Change My Mind, which was antithetical to the sort of 24-hour news cycle, if it bleeds, it leads, if that's removed as impermissible, no conservative viewpoint is permissible on YouTube.
It's my favorite gay wasp.
It is.
Gay Jew, I guess. But then we have to be careful with the terminology. You can follow him on the Twitter at Rubin Report, and you can follow him on YouTube, youtube.com/Rubin Report, for as long as he's allowed to still be there. Dave Rubin, how are you, sir?
Well, first off, Crowder, a lot of people right now, a lot of people telling me that you're a homophobe.
Yes.
That's word out on the street. Now, of course, a phobe is a phobia. A phobia is an irrational fear.
Yep.
So I thought, even though you're interviewing me here, I would ask you the first question. Do you have an irrational fear of gay people? Like if a gay person is, say, walking down the street and you're walking this way, do you freak out? Is
this going to lead to you telling everybody that I hugged you again and you try to embarrass me and ruin my street cred?
One time, we've only met once in person, and you did give me a very, very warm, uncomfortably long hug.
Ah, okay. Well, that always feels great coming from a man who typically likes hugs for men. So here's, by the way, how
irrational fear, because people are going to be angry just that I'm even talking to you right now. You deny my existence, Crowder. You're coming for gay people, even though you're dressed like a member of the Village People. What the hell's going on here? So do you have irrational fear?
This is if Alanis Morissette were added as a member. I don't necessarily think so, but I don't like the parties. They get a little bit loud. I lived in Chelsea for a year, and it was a little bit tough to find sleep. I'm not going to lie, I was irritated.
That's what it is. So you lived in Chelsea, which is like at one time was really like the gayest place in New York. I'm not sure if it still is anymore. I think maybe that's Hell's Kitchen, or out here we have West Hollywood. And I think a lot of what happens with you and the gays is you do have a little PTSD from living in Chelsea, where there's a lot of parties. It's very loud. There's people screaming and having good time. They have something called Sunday Fun Day. Really? I've never had that fun on a Sunday.
We just call it the Sabbath.
Yeah, well, I can't have that much fun during the day. I can have gay fun from about 8 p.m. to about 10 p.m. That's pretty much it for me.
Yeah. By the way, so how offended were you at the apology? Because some people were like, man, Rubin is pissed that you made the Rock Hudson Gomer Pyle bit. And I'm like, well, okay.
Well, I didn't think the joke itself was that great. I would have appreciated a Golden Girls reference. Blanche's brother, Clayton, was a very straight acting gay guy. I would have preferred that. That would have worked a little more comedically for me.
Yes.
But you're doing the right thing here, man. You cannot bow to these people. And, it's not a coincidence that the same guy that's going after you, I don't even need to mention his name, but if you want to, you can. The same Vox guy that's going after
the gentleman and scholar from Vox of Latino origin who happens to be attracted to members of the same sex, which is both beautiful and brave. Yes, continue.
Yes, let's say.
Well, I don't care what his ethnicity is. I don't care what his gender is. I don't care about any of those immutable characteristics. What I care is about what someone does with their life. And in this case, this is the same guy now going after you and trying to take down your channel and making a whole hullabaloo about it. This is the same guy that a couple weeks ago, I think you know this, I was trying to get Pete Buttigieg on the show, tweeted at Pete Buttigieg. His PR press people say, DM me. I get it. The head of PR for him says, DM me. Start going back and forth. We trade some emails. He's got a trip coming to LA in June. We're going to work it out. And then next thing you know, this guy and a Huffington Post journalist and Media Matters, the CEO, president of Media Matters, all jump in to start the mob attacking the press guy of Mayor Pete so that he won't do my show. And then they just stop responding.
What was their reasoning?
Well, I'm a scary dude, man.
I was going to say, here's the one thing. If anything, the only valid criticism I would say of you is that you tend to be very nice with everybody. I don't think I've ever seen you get in somebody's grill. I would love to see that.
Isn't it funny, Crowder, that we live in a time where everybody's always upset that everybody hates each other, right? Everyone's trying to destroy each other. We're more polarized than ever before. I mean, these are all just the things people say.
Right.
Then I come around and I have treated, you included, I have treated every single one of my guests.
You act as though I should have been the exception to that rule, but yes.
You were the one I thought about doing differently. But truly, I have every single one of my guests exactly the same, whether I've had Bishop Barron in here from the Archdiocese in my own home where I live with my husband, and he's obviously not for gay marriage. I treated him with the exact amount of respect that I've treated any of my lefty guests, that I would treat any libertarian or any progressive with. I treat everybody exactly the same. And that's partly why I'm taking the hits right now, because it's one thing to go after you because it's like you're saying I'm a conservative. I'm using comedy to really throw it in their face.
Sure.
Where me, like, they don't know what to do with me because if it was the back of a baseball card, they'd be like, wait a minute, this guy's supposed to be a lefty. He acts nice. He lives in LA. None of this adds up. So that's why a certain amount of hate is coming to me. But by the way, this Vox journalist, and again, I'm not even sure what his name is. Carlos something.
Gentleman, scholar, Latino origin, same-sex attraction, wonderful, beautiful, brave. Yeah.
In his Twitter bio, it says that Tucker Carlson is a white supremacist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that seems pretty freaking directly hateful, directly potentially inciting violence, like to be a white supremacist.
Well, it's not, but especially when you see that he didn't potentially incite. He said milkshake. He said assault, commit battery against white supremacists, and has identified people. Yeah, so it's not left to the imagination. There's we wouldn't call it foreshadowing if this were an auteur. You'd be like, oh, he's a violent guy.
Right. So think about what this guy's doing. I mean, we have 3 examples now. So he's trying to stop people from talking to me as an interviewer, no matter how moderate I may be. He's trying to literally get you booted off YouTube, and he's putting messaging out there as a journalist, and I've got air quotes going, that Tucker Carlson is a white supremacist. So this is why journalism is collapsing. This sucks on the YouTube front. I mean, they've been crushing my channel even worse than yours, and it's like, we gotta keep fighting, man. What else can we do, right?
I don't know if they've been crushing you worse than ours. Do you ever think that maybe the criticism lobbed against you is that you are very articulate, you're very nice, but sometimes you use expressions that would sound like a 1940s homophobe, like, see those 2 good time boys with their hullabaloo, see? It's
a little confusing.
Or a criticism of you?
No, it's a criticism. You said hullabaloo, the hullabaloo, these kids with their hootenannies.
I'm a little older than you. I am 40. I'll be 43 in a couple of weeks. So
really, you carry it well. That's the one thing with being lighter. Being overall, you're smaller than I am. Heavyweights don't age well. There's a lot of torque on the joints.
No, you're not aging well, everyone.
No, everyone knows that I'm not aging well. Like even Dylan Radigan.
Picking you off YouTube, it's the fact that you're aging horribly.
Yes, exactly. Like a podling from Dark Crystal. Not quite as bad as Don Lemon, but he just didn't get the gene. He didn't get the anti-aging gay genes. I don't know what it is with Don Lemon. He just the luck of the draw.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about comedy instead of the nonstop yelling you get everywhere else, check out our comedy playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, check out our full episode playlist. They're both right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.